probably our most controversial stream ever. It's gonna be a fun one. So this is the greatest games of all time tier list. Now let's get the obvious ones out of the way. I think Pokemon Red, Blue, we can all agree you can do W or L for each one of these games I mentioned. Pokemon Red, Blue. Boom. Let's do older ones too still, like Tetris. I think Tetris has got to make the list, right? It'd be weird not to include one of the GOATs, right? Minesweeper, I don't think Minesweeper goes in. I think Minesweeper gets bonus points just for being included within Windows. I think Tetris has surpassed being like a back then game. I think it's fair to include Tetris, but not Space Invaders. Tetris is literally the best-selling game of all time. There you go. I think that's a very fine point. A Link to the Past. I feel like A Link to the Past is good. I would spam Castlevania. I'm gonna be honest, I don't know if Castlevania makes it on the list. I think GoldenEye makes the list because of the PvP. I think that's one of the first like actual go to PvP games. I agree with that. Are you kidding, DM? Have you not played Castlevania Symphony of the Night? It's actually an RPG. Okay, well, you got me there. I haven't played it. It's probably why I have a terrible opinion of it. I think Castlevania, you know what, just to trigger you, Castlevania Symphony of the Night is the worst game ever made. It's so bad it will make our worst game of all time tier list. How does that sound, guys? Are we all agree? It's got to be games that I actually have played in order to have an opinion of, right? Diablo 2, I have played Diablo 2 a little bit. World of Warcraft. Okay, World of Warcraft. Yeah, World of Warcraft. Yeah, that obviously makes the GOAT list. There, okay, RuneScape, obviously RuneScape. We're going to add old school RuneScape so that way everyone knows we're talking about the RuneScape that's actually good. Let me move my camera. Street Fighter. I would argue Street Fighter 2 Turbo, maybe. I don't know if it, well, to be fair, I think that's just a personal favorite. I don't know if it really makes grades all the time. You have to remember a lot of these games are a product of their time. True, but we will rate them in their generation. All right? Like, obviously, you know, in the Link to the Past, while it's a goated game, is not going to compare to, like, Elden Ring nowadays in terms of, like, objective gameplay, okay? But in terms of like in their time, I would argue Halo 1. Yeah, I think Halo 1 makes it. We'll only put one Halo. Out of all the Halos, let's only put one Halo in. And I would probably say that we'll try to keep one of each of the like the generations of games. So I think we probably put of all the Halos. You think it's Halo 2? I would say Halo 1. You actually think Halo 2? I mean, Halo 2 is pretty good, but you think Halo 2 is better than Halo 1? Halo 2 invented online gaming. Halo 1 invented Halo. I mean, Halo 1 like felt absolutely top tier to me. All right, let's see what the poll says. Let's put it to a poll. Halo 2, it's 67% Halo 2. All right, chat says Halo 2 over Halo 1. All right. Okay, Halo 2 makes the list. Do you want to make a personal favorite tier list or a worldwide generally acknowledged tier list? This is subjective to games that I have played. I can't rate games that I haven't played. So this is going to be my personal greatest games of all time tier list. However, I will accept some input from the chat, for instance, like the Halo 1 versus Halo 2. You know what I mean? We can hash it out together, but when we start getting to the rating of it, I'm going to give my take on it. Ocarina of Time, or only one Zelda game allowed? Only one of each of those, I think, is going to be allowed. We're not putting like 5 Zeldas on the list. I'm sorry. We need an RTS. I'm going to put OG Command & Conquer, because for me, that's a GOAT. You know what? I think Homeworld's going to make the list also. Like OG Homeworld's going to make the list. I think Mario Kart 64 would make the list. And because we're talking Mario, I think Super Mario 64 is going to make the list. Oh yeah, Smash Bros. But Smash Bros. Melee would make the list out of all the Smash Bros. Oh, I think Minecraft. Minecraft's a good call. Minecraft is a good game. It also sort of invented the genre. Here's the thing. I'm going to make an argument for something, okay? And you are welcome to tell me that I'm wrong. But I'm going to make an argument that might be unpopular, which is that arguably, Fortnite should be on the list. Look, here's the reality of it, okay? Fortnite is a game that is now sort of a meme, but had one of the largest peaks of any game ever, and basically invented the genre, and also, let's be honest, at some point we all played it and liked it, okay? Maybe you look back at it and cringe a little bit, but like it should probably be on the list. Which also means that CSGO should be on the list. Because we're talking about in their heyday. Age of Empires 2, I agree with. Chrono Trigger, I don't have enough of an opinion on Chrono Trigger to add to the list. Super Metroid's going to make the list 100%. I think Civilization makes the list. I'm going to add the most recent Civ just because that's the one I play the most. Maybe the earlier ones were better, but I'm going to add it there. By the logic you're including, you have to include RuneScape and Final Fantasy VII. Well, these are games that I've played. So RuneScape is already on the list right there. Final Fantasy VII I never played, so it doesn't make the list. It might be one of the greatest games of all time, but I didn't play it. So I can't exactly rate the game I didn't play. Oh, Knights of the Old Republic's a good one. We have a pretty solid looking list right now. Skyrim, I think Skyrim makes the list. Hades might make, yeah, Hades would probably make the list. Hades is like super, super good. I think Hades is one of the best games I've ever played. Where are the Souls game? We'll add Elden Ring in. I think Elden Ring's an obvious choice here, especially because we just played it. It's in the conversation. Baldur's Gate 3? Yeah, probably. Baldur's Gate 3 is actually pretty good, man. It'd be hard not to do Baldur's Gate 3. Portal? Oh, shit, Portal. The original Portal. I agree with that, actually. OG Portal. That was great. I got that one in the orange box combo. MOBA? Probably League of Legends. Hate to say it, but League's probably on the list, my boys. Diablo 2 should probably make the list out of all the Diablos, right? I played that one enough. StarCraft. I would say StarCraft 2, I would add. Outer Wilds is actually a good one, too. I like the Outer Wilds call. I think Outer Wilds is good, and we need something to fill out sort of the middle of the tier. I also think because we're doing some exploration-based games, then Subnautica's got to make the list. We'll make Subnautica. Breath of the Wild. We already have a Zelda game in, which is A Link to the Past. No Man's Sky. Here's my argument for No Man's Sky, okay? I don't think we can put No Man's Sky on the list. I think now it's one of the best games, but in order to make it compete with these greatest games of all time, basically none of the games on this list were launched as dog shit. Like, all of these games were great on being launched. It would be pretty hard to make No Man's Sky on release, like, compete with some of these others. Maybe now it's great. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like it had such a bad start, like, it lost the opportunity to be one of the greatest games of all time. Witcher 3, haven't played that one, though. I've heard that one's worth playing. Overwatch? God, no. What about the Horizon games on PlayStation? I thought those were, like, okay. I was mid on them. Mario RPG? I agree with Super Mario RPG. Actually agreed. Okay, added Undertale. Do you think Undertale actually makes the list? I played that one. I liked it a lot. I don't know if it'd make the list for me. No Path of Exile? For ARPGs, yeah, PoE would make it. Yeah, no doubt. Gotta add Path of Exile, no doubt. Red Dead Redemption. I played Red Dead Redemption, but here's the thing. If we're going to do Red Dead Redemption, then we have to do Grand Theft Auto. And I might argue that Grand Theft Auto is better in multiplayer, but Red Dead Redemption is better in single player. So which of those two will we at? Maybe both of them? I think Grand Theft Auto is worth it. Okay, we'll add Grand Theft Auto, and we probably should add Red Dead Redemption 2. Because if we're going to like Grand Theft Auto, then we're going to like Red Dead Redemption 2. Okay, we'll add both those. I would go with Grand Theft Auto 5 for me personally. I feel like people look back at the other ones, but I feel like objectively Grand Theft Auto 5 is better than the other ones. Just in my opinion. I feel like Grand Theft Auto 5 got shit on a little bit, but like it deserves to be the best of all of them. Okay, we're going to add that and Red Dead Redemption in the list. Call of Duty Zombies equal genre inventor. Yeah, true, actually. We probably want... I think I'm going to say Modern Warfare 2 for the Call of Duties. I think... There's probably some arguments for some of the other ones. I know Call of Duty Nazi Zombies with, I believe, World at War? Get some bonus points there. But for me, Call of Duty is Modern Warfare 2 is the best one ever made. This is painful. How is this painful? Look at this list. We have a list of fucking bangers here. I don't know how this list could get much more solid, dude. We have like absolute bangers. Fallout. Here's the problem. If you're going to pick Fallout, here's the problem with Fallout. If we're going to pick Fallout, it has to be New Vegas. And if we're going to stick true to what this list is, it's my greatest games of all time. I haven't played New Vegas. I played Fallout 4 in 76. And people would argue that Fallout New Vegas is the best of all the Fallouts. I know they would. So I feel like it'd be hard for me to make the list. Fallout 4, I actually straight up just didn't like. It would be hard for me to add Fallout on this list because Fallout New Vegas is the one I haven't played and is the one that people say is the best, and Fallout 4 I actually didn't like. And sports games can make the list. Here's my issue with sports games. If we add sports games, then what ends up happening, Terraria is immediately making the list, you're right. The problem with sports games is which one? Sports game number 17, sports game number 27, they're all the same fucking game. The only difference is they change the number on the jersey and maybe modify the face a little bit and resell you the same game for $60. I have a hard time wanting to add literally any sports game on the list at all. They've been the same shit for like since the beginning of time. Maybe NFL Blitz 2000, bro. You remember that one? Mass Effect 2 for sure. Yeah, Mass Effect's actually pretty good. Does Mass Effect make the greatest of all time list? Though, I feel like it's a good game. But do you think Mass Effect is... Okay, W or L on Mass Effect? It's hard. Mass Effect I'm mid on. I feel like Mass Effect is like a worse Knights of the Old Republic. It's hard for me to want to pick Mass Effect for the list. All right, what then? It's not going to make S tier in my opinion. I think it's like maybe an A tier. Mass Effect 2, I would say. Okay, what added in? It Takes Two. It Takes Two is actually really good. I would agree with that. For co-op, too many games, man, this is impossible. This is the definitive list, boys. Quake? Oh shit, if we're adding Quake, then we'd have to add Unreal Tournament. All right, we gotta limit this to like 10 more games. Oh yeah, Sonic Adventure for 2 for the Dreamcast. Actually, the first one absolutely has to make the list. I think that's a good one. This is going to be like a 900 game list here. What would you put in D rating? It's going to be compared upon each other. We might change the names of it because D rating, like none of these games are D rated. We might change it to like one of like literally the best games of all time to like almost the best games of all time. We'll change the names of it a little bit to make more sense. Can't wait for the punchline to dragging them all to S tier. I know, right? We have to compare them against each other is the problem. I think Star Wars Galaxies makes the list. Battlefront 2. I'm going to say no. Here's my issue with Star Wars games. Like, just like with Galaxies legitimately deserves like a GOAT game. My problem with Star Wars games is like they get bonus points for being Star Wars. 2, Star Wars fans are drip-fed Star Wars content so much that of being dog shit Star Wars stuff over and over again that when you finally get a good Star Wars product, it gets like a billion goddamn extra points. Like there's not that many good Star Wars games. So when you get one, you get a huge surge of like, this gets like 50 bonus points. Battlefront 2 is great. I actually like the newer Battlefront better, which is weird. Dungeon Defenders. I actually like Dungeon Defenders, the OG one. X-Wing versus TIE Fighter. That was a good one too. Super Bomberman. I don't think Bomberman makes the list. It's a good game, but it was like a filler. Undertale, I actually don't think Undertale makes the greatest of all time. I think Undertale was a good game, but I think it hit at a time where there wasn't a lot going on, and also it was like a social media pumped meme filled game that had so much it had so many good clippable moments and good boss fights and jokes and stuff in it that people talked about it a lot. It was a great game, but I don't think greatest game of all time, not for me. Undertale is only good for its OST. The OST carried pretty hard, not gonna lie. The boss fights are actually pretty good too, but like I don't think it's a GOAT game. Borderlands series. I think all the Borderlands are pretty decent. Borderlands 2 is obviously the best of all of them. I don't think it makes a GOAT list, at least in my take. Like Borderlands 2, pretty good. I don't know if it makes a literal GOAT one. Cyberpunk, hell no. The Last of Us, I'm going to say no also. What do you guys think about Rogue Spear? Like as an A tier, potentially B tier? Doom, oh shit, dude. I'm going to put Doom Eternal. I literally think Doom Eternal is like, I think Doom Eternal is the best Doom ever made. You can roast me all you want for that shit. That's making the list for sure. God of War series. Okay, so here's the thing. God of War definitely is one of the best, but I haven't played the God of War series. I didn't have PlayStation till lately, and I don't own God of War currently on the PlayStation. Like, I can't really rate it if I haven't played it, right? Witcher 3, definitely. I haven't played that one either. Dragon Age series. I play a little bit of Dragon Age. This is going to be one that's going to piss a lot of people off. Dragon Age for me was an actual snooze fest. I'm sorry to tell you. Maybe it's one of those ones like Elden Ring where I tried that first and couldn't get into it, and so I need to like go back and replay it, but I was like falling asleep playing that game. Maybe Witcher 3 will be the next game we played. You got put in there Resident Evil 2. I thought Resident Evil was like alright. Resident Evil for me was never like extremely entertaining. I don't think I finished any of them. You know what I mean? I will tell you this though, which this one's going to piss a lot of people off. I'm adding Detroit Become Human to the list. I actually think Detroit Become Human is the best of like the multiple choice type of games. I think this one is fucking sick, and I'm ready to be roasted for my opinion. I actually watched like 10 different Let's Plays of it because it's one of my favorite of all time. Vampire Survivors made it 2D cool again. You know what? I think Vampire Survivors does deserve a place on the list. It also sort of invented the genre. I think Vampire Survivors is a good call. Plus, it's a good $3 game. Like, it's a good value of a game. Whereas Half-Life 2, one of the most impactful first-person shooters of all time. All right, you ready for an absolute take that's gonna get me blessed in oblivion? Half-Life 2 is not bad, but I mean, I played it, but you know, it didn't change my life or anything. It's not this game changed my life, is what I'm saying. Half-Life 2 made CS:GO. OG CS:GO is modded from Half-Life 2. Well, thank God. But if we're going to talk about the best basketball players all time, and we talked about Michael Jordan, we wouldn't be mentioning Michael Jordan's mother. We would just say Michael Jordan. So the same is here. Like, CSGO, in my opinion, I love. He's ignoring Stardew Valley. I play a fuckload of Stardew Valley. I did like 3 full playthroughs on Stardew Valley. The reason I'm not talking about Stardew Valley is I think Stardew Valley is one of those games that is a very good game, but is heavily carried by people that are Stardew Valley Andes. There's a lot of people that are just super goated about that game, but I think Stardew Valley is an A-tier game. I don't think it's one of the best games of all time. Lord of the Rings games was goated, the old ones though. Okay, so the Lord of the Rings game for Oh shit, what was it for? Oh god, what platform? Was it Dreamcast? There was one Lord of the Rings. Oh, OG Xbox. Lord of the Rings. You're like fighting Helm's Deep, and you gotta like fight trolls and shit, and you can play as either like Gandalf or whatever, and you can level your character up. Holy shit, that game was good. I'm putting a lot of games like I legitimately do like, not on the list as well, just because they're not, in my opinion, like literally the GOAT. Slay the Spire, I haven't played. I see that one mentioned a lot. Oh, Phantasy Star Online was super fucking good, dude. I played that on GameCube. I have a story about Phantasy Star Online. So my first experience with do not turn your power off while playing the game was with Phantasy Star Online. What ended up happening was we were doing a motorhome trip. We bought this piece of shit, like broken down motorhome, and I had my GameCube I brought with me that was plugged into like the CRTV in the front. And my dad was stopping to get gas. He's like, yo, I got to turn the thing off or we're having an alternator problem. So I was like, okay. He's like, I'm here for gas. Save your game. So I start saving Phantasy Star Online, my game. And he's like, okay, I got to turn it off. And I'm like, wait, give me a moment. And he like turns it off while it's in the middle of saving. And it corrupted the game. And I had played it like the entire trip. What about Assassin's Creed? The first Assassin's Creed of using the moment of realizing you can climb anywhere and explore the world is like Grand Theft Auto type of moment where you're like, wow, this is a big, open, awesome world in which I can kill basically anyone and run away. That moment is cool. But then when you realize that's the entire game and you spend the next 13 games in a row climbing buildings faster and faster and faster and faster and faster, that you start to just feel like a parkour Andy, you start to lose the love of the game. Assassin's Creed 2 was still good. After that, they kind of fell off very fast. No way DM has played Monster Hunter. I actually played Monster Hunter World. I played that one, and I loved it. Valheim. I think Valheim can make the list, yeah. Okay, let's add Valheim. Guys, we're starting to get to the point where we're going to have to start poking through these, because I think we're just about collected on the list here. Stanley Parable. Stanley Parable would probably make the GOAT list, actually. I actually think Stanley Parable is a very unique game and also a very good call out. I played that one a lot. I watched a bunch of people play that one because I enjoyed it so much. Let's tap it at like 5 more. Kingdom Hearts is good, but I feel like that's the same thing as Stardew, which is a good game, but it's carried by its fan base they're just huge Kingdom Hearts Andes. That's all they do. That's all they talk about. They have tattoos of Kingdom Hearts. They own the sword. It's a good game, but I don't think it's like such a huge, massive game. Far Cry did literally change gaming. I like Far Cry, but I like games like Red Dead Redemption and Grand Theft Auto better. Banjo-Kazooie. Okay, here's my L take. Banjo-Kazooie is good, not great. All right? It was pretty clunky even back in the day, and it was mildly annoying. All right? I'm just going to say it. Deep Rock Galactic probably would make the GOAT list. I haven't played it enough to have a good opinion. All right. First game, Pokemon Red. And we have a lot of games, boys, so we're not going to spend 15, 20 minutes on each one of these. We have a lot of games. This is going to be my greatest games of all time tier list. I'm going to try to get through these because there's a lot of these to talk about. We're not going to do like a full game review of each one of these. We're going to put them in the tiers that we're talking about. We're going to rename. Yeah, we probably should rename the list here first. Okay. This looks good. All right, here is my best games ever made tier list. This is going to be broken down with the top tier being best games ever made, basically. Like the absolute goated of the GOATs. It'll go near perfect next. Incredibly good games with no complaints. Great games with some flaws, and then honorable mentions. These are all games that I've played, and it's a subjective list of games, but either way, any game on this list, you should probably try at least once. We're going to start with Pokemon Red, and this very obviously goes to best games ever made. Started Pokemon, and in my opinion I think it's the best Pokemon game. I loved it as a kid, played a ton of Pokemon, and it has the best in terms of Pokemon creation. I'm trying to use the word. The best way of making it. Like all of the actual Pokemon themselves seem like they could actually exist. Like there's nothing super stupid in it. Some of the latest Pokemon that have like Trash Bag as a literal Pokemon that's actually a Pokemon, for instance. After that is going to be Tetris, which has to go in the best games ever made. People are literally still playing this game. Has competitions around it. Was unique at the time. Has an amazing soundtrack still. Is going to be one of the best games ever made. Hard to explain it other than that. Tetris is pretty much a GOAT. A Link to the Past is going to be in best games ever made as well. Going to have to go there, in my personal opinion. I think it's pretty much was my introduction to Zelda, and maybe is the best Zelda ever made. Arguably Breath of the Wild, but the problem is Breath of the Wild's a more recent one, so it gets carried by having better technology. I still think this is a GOAT game, however. 007, I'm going to put in near perfect. This is probably going to piss some people off. Here's the reason why. Is because the solo player is pretty good. The multiplayer is why everyone talks about this game. So if the single player was also absolutely goated, then sure. But I think that the multiplayer is basically perfect and the best game ever made. The single player is not really why people talk about it, however. So it has a good PvP in the game, which only gets it slightly down because of that. Old School RuneScape actually goes in one of the best games ever made, in my own personal opinion. Just absolutely, absolutely fantastic MMO. I think it's the best MMO ever made, and WoW's going to have to go in there as well. We already got a ton of games and best games ever made. World of Warcraft is literally a genre-defining game at this point. Halo 2, I was arguing when we were talking about this with chat that Halo 1 would be the one to pick over Halo 2, but everyone said, or I say 70% of people said, that Halo 2 is better than Halo 1, so that one goes on the list there for sure. I'm going to put Super Smash Bros. At near perfect. Super Smash Bros. For me, as all of them, just Smash Bros. Being created would be best games ever made. Smash Bros. I think has somewhat the same problem of 007, which that everyone only plays it just because of the multiplayer, but it's still like absolutely fantastic. The problem is, I actually think the balancing of it in terms of characters, like there's some characters that are just way, way, way better than others. Yes, even nowadays people are still using, I mean, everyone's using Peach and Jigglypuff and all that stuff, but the reality is that Smash Bros. Has like a certain subsection of heroes that are absolutely busted, and then there's kind of like, there's everyone else, is kind of my take on it. And there was some annoying parts about it, which is like, I think the default for the game should actually be no items, but the default for it is with items. So everyone like grew up playing like, oh, items, and you're smashing around and just kind of having fun with the game. But the game was so good from a fighting point of view. I wish items were like you had to manually turn them on instead of like actually being the default. I played this game all the way through college, played in some tournaments and absolutely got my ass kicked. And I also think that the ceiling is insanely high in this game. I think it might be the best fighting competitive game, just in my own personal opinion there. Super Mario 64 is one of the best games ever made. The amount that you actually got within an N64 game was crazy for this one. The world was absolutely massive. This was a defining moment for most people who played this game in its day and age, because you're like, holy shit, this world's huge. And then jumping in the paintings and all that, it's one of the like mindfuck types of moments where you're like, oh wow, you can go in there. I don't know. I think that's a top tier game. Same with Mario Kart. Actually, I'm going to say Mario Kart is near perfect. All right. I think it is a very, very good racing game. I think that the multiplayer is very good in it. I think that the actual like fighting versus multiplayer is very good in it as well. And I'm struggling to want to put it in the best games ever made, but I would argue that it was very good, obviously very good, but I feel like maybe Double Dash, this is my L take here. I think that Double Dash is arguably better, and I feel like some of the tracks could have been better. Like I feel like the game and concept got carried by there wasn't like actually a billion of these style of racing games, and it got kind of first movers advantage a little bit. Some people are bringing up Diddy Kong Racing, for instance, as an example, as one that did it better. I don't know if Diddy Kong Racing did it better. I feel like it's all right and maybe could have had a little bit of a better soundtrack. So for that reason, and the fact that maybe Double Dash was better, I'm going to put it at near perfect. Homeworld for me, I think goes to incredibly good. I think this was a very good RTS and was one of the first space RTSs I played. I think this is a fairly enjoyable game. The soundtrack was actually pretty good too. It makes the list of GOAT games. I don't think it makes the list of the best of the GOAT games. Like I don't think this beats out Super Smash Bros. Right? I don't think it beats out Mario Kart or GoldenEye. But I think it's on the list for me. I think it's pretty good. Command and Conquer. The OG Command & Conquer, I'm going to put at great with some flaws. People would probably argue Red Alert 2 was better. It could have had more game modes on launch of it. I feel like Command & Conquer, the OG, for me, is my favorite personal subjective Command & Conquer. Most people would argue, like I say, Red Alert 2. I liked Command & Conquer, though I felt like the campaign was maybe a little limited, and they didn't really have the skirmish mode on PC, though it came out with it on N64 later. So I feel like maybe scenarios and stuff could have been great. I know it was early for RTS, and it gets some bonus points for basically being one of the first RTSs ever. So it makes the list, but there's a couple things that I think could have been improved upon for Command & Conquer that would have made it bumped up to incredibly good in my own personal opinion. Well, arguably it could be up there in the terms of Homeworld. In fact, it probably is up there in Homeworld. So it's either this one goes up to Homeworld or Homeworld goes down here, and they're both down here in great with some flaws. So you know what? I'm gonna put them. I'm gonna both put them in great with some flaws, because I think Command & Conquer is at least as good as Homeworld, but I feel like both of these games could have been slightly better, just in my opinion. So I think we'll put it even there. Knights of the Old Republic, I think, goes to best games ever made. I think that Knights of the Old Republic is actually maybe the best single-player RPG that I would say is Star Wars themed, but there's not too many of those. Is one of the best single-player RPGs that has good voice acting, good environments with an IP that didn't fuck up an IP. Like, I know back in the day they weren't kind of in the business of constantly fucking up IPs. But this is, there's basically no complaints. Like, and I think about things like, where can I find some critiques of the game? I kind of can't. So I think it would be hard for me to put it in near perfect, because I think it is perfect. I think incredibly good for Civilization 6. This is probably a subjective opinion. I mean, this whole list is subjective, but Civilization 6 is a game that I just really, really enjoyed. I played it so much I had it on PC and then bought it on my iPad just because I wanted to continue to play it. It's really good as a single-player game versus AI as well. Really fun against friends. I feel like it's only incredibly good, though. I feel like for me that I didn't rant and rave and stay with this one for years, and I didn't constantly find myself thinking about this as an older game, like, I want to go back and replay it. I feel like you play it, at some point you get over it, maybe you wait for the next one, so I think it kind of goes into incredibly good in my own personal opinion, okay? Super Metroid's going to the best games of all time. I think it's the best of all Metroids. Metroid literally invented the genre called Metroidvania, which, I mean, that and Castlevania, because that's what Metroidvania is. They're kind of talking about both of them. Castlevania, sort of, they did the same thing. One of the best soundtracks, literally, of all time. Really good boss fights, good exploration, and variable exploration, which you could kind of do things out of order a little bit, though the point of Metroidvania is you literally have to get certain items to go certain places. There are ways to sort of sequence break, etc. I think the best part about Super Metroid, however, is the movement. I think Super Metroid's movement is the cleanest movement in any Super Nintendo game. The actual ability to control your character is so insane that speedrunners are like still coming up with tech, etc. literally, a dozen years, 24 years literally later at this point. So Super Metroid for me is going to be an absolute GOAT. I think Age of Empires 2 makes this list as well. One of the best, if not the best, RTS. I know some people might argue StarCraft, Warcraft 3, etc. I think Age of Empires 2 did the units extremely well, where I felt like, okay, you got the knight, you got the archer, you got these like variety of units that actually make sense. It's medieval, so for me, it gets a couple bonus points, to be honest. But the different civilizations you would have, like English or, what have you, you have all these different ones, and they would get different powers associated with it. The maps were pretty good. I like the way they did like the wood, the gold, the stone system, etc. And transversing through the ages was something fairly unique as well that I don't really remember coming from any other game. So for me, Age of Empires 2 is like, I love seeing going from like a tent to a castle. I think that's super awesome. OST was pretty good too, yeah. So for me, Age of Empires 2 is a GOAT. I think CSGO is a near perfect, in which I really, really enjoyed the game. I still play it. It's actually my most played Steam game. It has some issues, which is that some of the maps are better than others. I feel like some of the maps are balanced better than others. And, because there's like the T side of the map, CT side of the map, etc. I know you swap, but still. There can be cheating and connection issues, though I know they have VAC and all that, but I feel like there was just some issues, okay, which is why I say near perfect, because it wasn't perfect, but it was still like a absolute top-tier game, in my opinion. I'm going to put Fortnite on the list and put it in incredibly good, just because it's genre-defining, one of the most played games of all time, definitely has plenty of its share of issues, but it would be pretty hard to deny the fact that Fortnite is is a GOAT game. Like, it's going to be on the list in the same way that Minecraft is on the list, but Minecraft did it so well and continued to do it so well and continued to update it that Minecraft actually never fell off. So in my opinion, it goes to the GOAT, like best game of all time. Minecraft goes there. But Fortnite, for the same reasons, is going to make the list, which is genre defining. Tons of people play it. A lot of people who may not admit it nowadays played it at one point and still actually quite enjoyed the game. So Fortnite's going to have to make the list, even though you look back at it, it's cringy now or whatever for some people. But I still think Fortnite has to make the list, but just to be fair to the list. Hades, for me, I think just because we're comparing against, like, if we look at this list, we have like absolutely insane games, is going to make incredibly good. I think Hades itself gets carried by a couple things, which is visuals and good OST. I do wish there was more boss fights. You do have good bosses and the replayability is good, but you are sort of replaying the same thing, in my own personal opinion. So for that reason, I don't want to put it in like the absolute best game of all time, but the OST is absolutely phenomenal. Hades, I thought, was pretty much a masterpiece, and Hades 2 is damn near just as much of a masterpiece. So Hades itself is going to make the list for sure for me. Skyrim. I think Skyrim, oh man, I want to put it at best games ever made. So I will, actually. I think Skyrim for me was, when it came out, had a ton of hype around it, and I think the hype was fair. I think Skyrim has some of the most you can do in the world. It felt kind of like Elden Ring when I played recently, that Skyrim just had a huge open world, amazing OST. There's a lot of wow moments in it. Like, oh, wow, a dragon, whatnot. I think it'd be pretty hard to deny Skyrim in its peak as one of the best games ever made. And I think Elden Ring has a lot of the same things that Skyrim has. So we're going to put Elden Ring in the same list here, which is that Elden Ring, in my own personal opinion, maybe the best single-player game I've ever played. I actually think I enjoyed Elden Ring more than I enjoyed Skyrim. Has some of the best visuals, some of the best boss fights, some of the best environment. Hard for me not to put that in some of the best games ever made, honestly, in my own personal opinion. I actually enjoy the combat more in Elden Ring, even though, you know, it feels a little janky sometimes. Maybe it's a controller thing, but it can feel a little janky. I actually thought the Skyrim combat was, like, a lot of that for me was like spamming conjuration until like I got high enough conjuration level and then just like blasting people with stuff. I feel like Skyrim's combat felt a little bit worse than Elden Ring, but Elden Ring's a newer game, so I can understand why that would be. Baldur's Gate 3, from a storytelling aspect, a variety of choice aspect, and a voice acting aspect, as well as, I guess, music's decent, but I didn't really think the OST was like one of the reasons. I think Baldur's Gate 3's won some of the most awards of all time too. Baldur's Gate 3 basically has to make the list. Also, a good value in terms of price compared to what you get offered, compared to replayability. You can actually play co-op with your buddy as well. I'm actually doing a playthrough right now with my buddy Kyer, and so I think it makes the list. It makes the list for sure. I'm actually gonna put Subnautica in best games ever made as well. I think Subnautica, out of any game I've ever played, Subnautica has the best mood setting. If you get into the game and you go underwater and you like serene and then it gets scary, like they don't force the mood onto you. They let the mood itself rest upon you from a byproduct of the world. I think if you haven't played Subnautica, out of any game I'm going to mention on this list, I actually recommend Subnautica as the game. I over RuneScape, over any of the games, over Elden Ring, over all of these other games. I actually recommend Subnautica as a game that you must play the most out of any game that I would talk about today. If you haven't played Subnautica, it's a phenomenal, unique experience that for me is, I really, really wish I could replay this game again with never having played it. I think out of any game, it's the one I'd want to replay the most. Super Mario RPG is going to go the near perfect. I enjoyed Super Mario RPG a lot. I don't really think it has much replayability, in my own personal opinion. I even tried redoing the remaster, which is nice with some new content, and I didn't enjoy it as much as the first playthrough. There can be some kind of annoying things in Super Mario RPG, to be honest. Like, some of the combat is all right, and some of it is not so all right. The inventory system could be better. I don't know. I feel like there's some things that I look back in Super Mario RPG and I think like the characters were unique. The way that they actually brought Super Mario into an RPG was fairly unique. And then there was some times where I just wasn't really enjoying the game as much. So I think it's near perfect. I think that the OST is pretty good and carries it pretty hard. Yeah, I don't know. For some reason, I struggle to want to put it in best games of all time. I think it's better than like Hades and Civilization, but I don't think it makes literally the GOAT list. I'm going to put it in near perfect because I think it's a phenomenal game, but I feel like it can be a little frustrating at times, in my own personal opinion. StarCraft 2, I think StarCraft 2, man, this one's hard for me. I played a lot of StarCraft 2. I think it should be at least near perfect. I feel like this was a really good RTS game. I think it's better than OG Command & Conquer, and I loved OG Command & Conquer. I struggle to put it in best games ever made just because when StarCraft 2 came out, maybe StarCraft 1 would have been a better example, but I'm not putting games I didn't play in here. This is just the list from the games I've played personally. I feel like that when StarCraft 2 came out, there were already other RTSs that were pretty good as well, and I think Age of Empires 2 was better than StarCraft 2, so I'm going to have to put it in near perfect. I think there's an argument to be made, as someone says in the chat while I'm doing this, that StarCraft created esports, which is a very valid point, and I mean still goes on today, and is a phenomenal game. I don't really have negative things to say about it, as much as I feel like Age of Empires 2 was basically a better RTS for me in its time and day and age. I don't really rate stuff based upon esports as much, or else StarCraft 2 would probably go in the best games ever made. And there's some times that StarCraft 2, I feel like PvP can be pretty frustrating stuff. It's probably just a skill issue. I think I'm going to put it in near perfect because it's great, and I don't really have a lot of bad things to say about it. Elder Wilds, for me, Elder Wilds goes into honorable mentions because, and the bottom one here being honorable mentions, because for me personally, Outer Wilds is very good, but when we're getting into the conversation here of like absolute best games ever made, I don't think Outer Wilds is really going to compete in that. I think it has what Subnautica has of like mood setting, but doesn't necessarily set the mood as well as Subnautica. The environment is beautiful, and some of the mechanics are pretty cool, and the puzzles are pretty cool, etc. It kind of reminds me of Myst in a weird way. Diablo 2 has to go in some of the best games ever made. I played this just enough to realize why it defined the genre, basically made itemization what it is, and it's going to be pretty hard to find anything overwhelmingly negative to say about it. And we are rating these sort of based upon their time and day and age, so I think Diablo 2 is pretty much got to make the best games ever made. I would say near perfect for Portal. I just wish it was longer. It's pretty much the only negative thing I'm going to say about Portal. I kind of wish it was longer, and some of the puzzles can be cheesed pretty hard, but I guess that's sort of the point of Portal. I actually really liked Portal. I thought Portal was one of the most fun games I've ever played, for sure. It's why it's on the list. League of Legends. Oh, man. I like League of Legends. I have more hours in League of Legends than any game other than RuneScape, and maybe even more hours than RuneScape. But I'm going to be honest. It's going to have to go into incredibly good, or actually maybe great with some flaws, because here's the issue with it. It's a GOAT game. It's a MOBA defined. It didn't get bonus points like Fortnite for making the genre, but they have some flaws. They've had balance problems since literally the start of the game, which I guess all MOBA kind of does. Having your teammates basically be nonstop flaming every single game you ever play for the rest of your life is highly annoying because it's a PvP game. The way that they dealt with the toxicity of players and stuff can be pretty much abused depending upon when you were playing the game. You can literally get banned just by having people spam it. I don't know. There's a million issues that everyone has with League, and as someone says in chat, the issue with League is the other players, which is kind of true. And they change it so often. The other problem is League is only a game that you can really play as like your main game all of the fucking time. The game changes so often that you come back to it a year later. It's a totally different map. It's a totally different meta. It's pretty hard for me to put League higher than a lot of these other games. I think it's great with some flaws. Grand Theft Auto 5 for me goes in some of the best games ever made. Personally, I think it's an absolute GOAT. Hard to take anything away from Grand Theft Auto 5. I guess maybe hackers and multiplayer, but I think the single player is absolutely fucking great. The multiplayer is absolutely great. Hard for me to have any negatives really to say about the game. Maybe hacking, but that's about it. Red Dead Redemption goes into there for basically the same reasons. Although I'd say the multiplayer from Grand Theft Auto was better, but the single player from Red Dead Redemption 2 was probably better. But same logic there. Modern Warfare 2 goes in greatest games of all time because I think Modern Warfare 2 was the best first-person shooter console experience that we've ever had. I think it was all downhill from Modern Warfare 2 for consoles specifically. OG Xbox lobbies were toxic in a good way, in which it was toxic because it was hilarious, not toxic like League of Legends, which is frustrating. Hard for me to take anything away from Modern Warfare 2. I think that's some peak gaming for me. Sonic Adventure, I think I'm going to put it in near perfect. I feel like Sonic Adventure was a fairly good open world for the time. This is on the Dreamcast when I played this. I think that in terms of just raw fun enjoyability, like it wasn't super serious. It was actually quite fun. The Chaos boss or whatever was actually pretty cool at the end there. And I think it carried for its time. I also think that it had a lot of cool like side shit you could do. Like the Dreamcast controller had this little like memory card you could put in and you could load like your pets in it and whatnot. Like that was actually pretty cool. The chows, yeah. I think that's pretty top tier. Mass Effect 2 for me, I think goes in near perfect as well. Enjoyed Mass Effect 2. There's not a lot of moments in Mass Effect 2 that for me that just like overwhelmingly stand out that make me want to put it in best games ever made. It's just a very solid, all the way through, very good game. Is kind of how I feel about that. It Takes Two goes to all honorable mentions. I feel like this is one of the best co-op games made, and gets carried by the fact that there's not a lot of good couch co-op games in this day and age for you to play with a partner. So I think that it gets an honorable mention spot there. I think Terraria makes the list as some of the greatest games ever made. I think for 2D, side-scrolling style with good bosses, good crafting, good world development, exploration, Terraria is pretty much a GOAT. Doom Eternal, I think, is going to go into incredibly good, arguably near perfect. Probably should go to near perfect. I mean, the soundtrack alone would put it into near perfect. I feel like the fluidness of the combat in terms of first-person shooting is the reason for doing that. And it also, like, Doom is not like a super serious game. Like, it's just over-the-top blasting, and I never had a bad moment playing Doom Eternal. Like, it's not frustrating remotely. You feel like a god. I actually think the game is near perfect. It could arguably maybe make best games ever. Well, no, I think it's fair where it's at. I think that's fair. Rogue Spear, I think, was great with some flaws. Good game. Had some issues related to it. I feel like trying to learn this game was a little bit frustrating. Maybe it's just because I was a kid when I played this one, but I feel like trying to learn this game and like figure this one out was like kind of frustrating for me. So I probably could have played it as an adult and had a better experience. But I remember being like somewhat frustrated with this game, but actually being like kind of blown away by it for its time. So maybe it gets carried by its era. It's an alright game. I probably would need to replay it to have a better take on it right now. Detroit Become Human for me goes incredibly good. This is the game that I've watched the most on YouTube. Like, I actually watched this game more than any other game. I watched like 10 playthroughs of this. Anytime someone that I like Tyler One or something, plays this game, like, I'll watch the entirety of the playthrough. I thought the voice acting was good. I thought the storyline was good. I thought the characters were appealing. I thought the variety in terms of options were fairly appealing as well. I actually really, really liked the game. Valheim for me goes to near perfect. The only reason this isn't in best games like ever made is I think that it kind of came out in a time in which there's a significant amount of good open world survival games. There were some thoughts I had when I was playing the game in relation to it could get a little bit annoying. I guess there is a good point about it being in early access and it's not technically out yet, but it still does make the list, which makes it, kind of a GOAT. I feel like the traveling can be somewhat annoying. The item collection can be somewhat annoying. The boss fights are pretty good. It's not fully out, so it's like a 9 out of 10 for me. Maybe an 8.5 out of 10. Like, there was some moments in the game where I'm kind of like, yeah, it's just taking forever. But other than that, this is a great game, especially if you're playing with a buddy. It just takes a while, which is fine, I suppose. Vampire Survivors goes to incredibly good. It's a $3 value, which is insane. It kind of made a new, well, not really made a new, but it defined a genre, I would say, of the survival genre. Definitely had a big moment in the Son of a Blow Up. It's actually super fun, super simple. They have it on the phone now too, which is pretty good as well. Vampire Survivors is a great game, so it's going to make the list. The Stanley Parable for me, this might be my most controversial take, okay? But the Stanley Parable for me is one of the best games ever made. It is a game that is completely unique. It is completely unique in my opinion. It does not have any flaws that I can think about. The narration is probably the best narration in any game. It has enough endings that replayability is insane. It's the type of game that even if you've already played it, you want to watch somebody else play it too, because of how much that you can't wait to see their reaction to stuff. It's really, really hard for me to want to say anything negative about the Stanley Parable, literally at all. I feel like this game is so unique. It is arguably the most unique on the entire list. And for me, Path of Exile, you would think I'm going to make it into the best games ever made. I probably would. I think when I think about it, it goes to near perfect. Here's the reason. I'm a Path of Exile Andy, so I want to just dump it in the top tier. I love Path of Exile. I mean, look, I've been sponsored by them. I'm testing their Path of Exile too. I would love to put it in best games ever made, but let's be honest, the game has a major flaw, and that is it is very hard to get into this game. There is no other game on this list that you can pick up that has the barriers to entry of the Path of Exile. If I put it in best games ever made, it is out of a bias of pure love for the game. I don't think, for instance, games like RuneScape are out of bias for being in the best games ever made. RuneScape is a game that you can pick up and understand. Maybe the graphics would have an issue with it, okay? But they're improving that because it's an older game. I feel like Path of Exile has a significant enough of an issue of trying to learn the game that it has to go into the near perfect tier if I'm going to be fair. That's my own personal opinion, okay? So you're welcome to roast me for not playing the best games ever made. You could say the in-game and the itemization carries, which it does, which is why it's on the list. But I do think it would be fair to say it's near perfect. Anyway, that's my list. Not too many on the bottom, because let's be honest, this is a list of go-to games. These are all subjective based upon games I've actually played. That's why games like Final Fantasy VII aren't on the list, because I haven't played them. And this is out of my own personal enjoyment. Really, 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 really like all of the games, but out of all of the games on this list, the one that I recommend the most is Subnautica. If you have not played Subnautica on this list, then you must play Subnautica, at least in my own personal opinion. That's it for now. Thanks for watching the video. Have a great day, and I'm sure these comments are all going to agree with this. RuneScape taught me more life lessons than the entirety of education. Yeah, so the fact is, the RuneScape taught me how to type also. It taught me how to type, how not to trust people. It taught me how to deal, like, not be an asshole, basically. Like, RuneScape could teach you not to be an asshole. Or it could teach you to be an asshole, I guess, depending upon what kind of person you're.